On the podcast this week, I talked to Ahmed Abdul Hakim and Bassel Sublini. They are the co-founders and owners of the amazing new platform Meelz.me. We discuss all things tech, startups, and why it is important for restaurants to recognize the chefs as the soul of the business. This episode is massively informative, so keep your ears ready. Listen out for a story involving salt and sugar. Time to rock and roll. Welcome back to the Chef JKP podcast. And on the show this week, we have two very, very special guests. We have Ahmed and Bassel from Meelz.me. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Really lovely to have you both here. We're very excited. Now, there's a lot to discuss. First thing is first, can you tell us about your experience within hospitality and why you both decided to start this platform?
Yeah, do you want to go ahead, Ahmed, first? Me? I've always been an expat most of my life. I grew up between Spain and Libya and Lebanon. And from a very young age, we in the family gravitated towards food. So I had two parents who were very accomplished cooks, who sort of instilled in us, the importance of quality ingredients and how the kitchen was always a sacred ground. And from there, it's just, I think it's subconsciously, I started to gravitate myself towards food. So I started taking on projects early on when I was in advertising that had to do with food. Then in business consulting, and then eventually when I got into startups, my first project was a kitchen knife company called Pacific 67. And after that, I met with Ahmed working on a project for the Ministry of Cabinet Affairs and sort of began working on what is today Meelz.
Fantastic. And Ahmed, for you as a local Emirati, you must have seen the Dubai landscape change quite a lot when it comes to food itself.
Yes. See, for me, I think my relation with food started the day I born. This is the day I started drinking. I started my journey within food and beverage when I was, 7 years old. This is the first business I did when I started selling. I had a big fig tree in my home.
Nice.
And this is where I used to go and take all the figs and go in front of the mosque or Jum'ah prayer and start selling these figs after the prayer.
Amazing.
So this is what the first business in food. Then in 2011 I opened my first restaurant. It was a very traditional restaurant, a lot of messed up, a lot of mistakes, this is where I start learning what food and beverage businesses is. Then I opened another restaurant. Then by 2016 we opened 3 first. Then we opened also bricks. And now we open also 3-4 different virtual brands. We try just to be in our kind of mindset to be Corona friendly and sometimes to be also anti-Corona, because we enjoy also the physical experience brands more. We have few brands or few concepts still in the pipeline, will be coming soon inshallah. And also we change the direction toward the technology, where we started now Meelz, and this is how we end up with Bassel on Meelz.
Wow, fantastic. Now, can you tell us exactly what is Meelz?
So Meelz is a platform, or it's the world's first platform that empowers chefs to sell directly to customers. In simple terms, essentially what chefs can do is create their own delivery menu and get it fulfilled and delivered throughout the city through us. They can create their own recipe boxes, they can create master classes, whether physical in specific culinary institutes or in front of the camera digitally, and sell them to customers. They can organize chef's tables, and they can have access to a store which connects them with food and kitchenware vendors.
And why did you decide to start it?
The idea of Meelz came during the pandemic, and the credit goes to Ahmed and the team. Obviously, during the pandemic, one of the most impacted sectors was the F&B industry, whether it was chefs, restaurant managers, or regular staff. And what we realize is that there could be a better way, that leverages today's technology, that empowers these chefs to do a lot more. And so that's sort of how the idea of Meelz started. Initially, it was a simple service for recipe box delivery.
Yes.
I think when we first started brainstorming, and then it became what it is today.
Because Ahmed, you have, excuse me, I have to say, Three Fields and Bricks is one of the best restaurants, I believe, in the country.
Thank you.
In all honesty, I really believe it. And of course, when the pandemic hit, I remember one of the things that your team was doing at Bricks and Three Fields was the desserts and the ice creams, and this became very, very popular throughout the pandemic. Is that where the idea gradually started?
See, as a guy who coming from food and beverage background or industry, chefs are the soul of our business. And I always realize when you go back, or when you need to imagine the future, go back to the history or go back to the past. Let's say Uber. Uber is not a new concept. Airbnb is not a new concept. It's been there for 100 years ago. But because of the connectivity, because of internet, it's become, the technology play a big part on this. When you see the restaurant worlds, 100 years ago, 300 years ago, it used to be driven by chef. So this is where it's kind of giving you the vision of the chef world will be driven by chef. And this is where, when we saw, and it was like approved when Corona came, these guys lost their job. They were like, people they don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. They're only trained to be in the kitchen. Not all of them, but most of them.
Yes.
And this is where we say how we can come up with something where these guys don't need to be in a kitchen, don't need to be in a restaurant, and they will be safe. And this is where Meelz come from.
Wow. Yeah. And the beauty of Meelz here, is it's something that sort of helps everyone in the value chain. So it benefits chefs, it benefits vendors, it benefits operators, and it benefits ultimately customers because they get that access.
Because it's quite fantastic, and you have rather a large or an incredible amount of very talented chefs so far on board. But what has been, for both of you, what has been the biggest learning curve so far when you've been setting up the platform?
Yeah, first one is communication. When you're coming up with something like this that doesn't exist, it's always very difficult to present it, and to explain it to people, because you have to sell them on that vision, So that's one of the challenges. Another challenge would be figuring out the operations. Again, technology is relatively simple because you're just putting operations, into a structured system. But figuring out, how you're gonna create the recipe and then make sure, that you train the right people to actually execute it, and then make sure that your delivery people are actually on time and get it there. This is a challenge.
And how was it when you decided, okay, Meelz is going to go ahead, but we now have to approach the chefs? How was that?
Yeah, Ahmed started talking to a lot of the chefs that he knows in the industry, and most of the discussions that you've had were positive. I think one of the first people that you talked to was Chef Gregoire.
Chef Gregoire, we involved some of them in our development process. The first thing, we don't pitch them by the idea to involve them, is we pitch them the idea to be part of it, and to start thinking together and start understanding what they are looking for. And this is where we developed. One of the things that, yes, we understand the market, but also we try to wear the hats of the chef, but whatever we are doing, we will not be able to see from their eyes. So it's better to involve them in that process and start asking them. And this is where it started from. And this is where they started also showing some interest. Yes, we also want to be part of this, and this is how it started, by involving them in the development process.
Incredible. Now, there are and there have been various different platforms throughout the market. For example, last year there was a platform throughout the pandemic that had different chefs,
Yes.
and this was specifically for takeaway. Whereas Meelz, you can have the meal boxes. It all helps towards the value chain, as you say. But what makes it different, or what makes it stand out above the rest?
I think one very important thing here is that we're partners with chefs. We made sure, that not only we take their opinion and we take their input into whatever we're creating, but they have a vested interest in what we do. And this model is relatively new for what it is. I don't think anyone else is doing it the way we're doing it. The other part, what makes it really special, is the combination of these services. So we think of the chefs as the center of the platform, and then we figure out ways, to monetize their talent, to monetize their IP, and to help them reach a larger audience.
I would like to give a shout out to Food Sheikh of what he did with this project. I think it's called the Chef Stars.
Yes, correct.
It was really interesting project and good project, and Food Sheikh is one of the main players in the market when it comes to the food industry. So thank you for him to starting such things and supporting the chefs, because this is where also it's part of our inspiration to do something to support chefs. I think Meelz, it's providing different verticals where chef is the centric. There are chefs who's interested on food delivery. There are chefs who are interested in master classes. There are chefs who are interested in chef store. So there are different verticals, because chefs coming also from different backgrounds, different interests. And what we try to cover up in Meelz is to focus on these different verticals, which came from the chefs when we were doing our development process. These ideas, some of these concepts came from the chefs themselves. So it's building by them, to them, for them. This is the only thing that I see. And it's also empowered by a very advanced technology to make things easier.
Yeah.
Well, now, as you both, especially you, Ahmed, you've been in the F&B industry since you were 7, as you mentioned before. Now, let's say apart from COVID-19 and apart from the pandemic, what do you both feel is currently the biggest challenge that restaurants are facing?
That one's for you. Sorry.
Huh?
That one's for you.
I think there are few challenges, which is normal. We always have this quote: there is no problem, it's a problem. So you always have a problem, which is normal. It's part of the journey that you have. But I think the biggest challenges is trying to copy-paste each other without having the soul of the concept. And I think the biggest things that's happening now, or the biggest challenge that's happening now, especially with Corona, and I think we're also doing the same thing sometimes, is by trying to be Corona-friendly and trying to create these virtual brands. Then you realize, with all these virtual brands, there is no community engagement. And then you start using different influencers, different things, but then you realize that this influencer is promoting 20, 30 different brands at the same day. So I think the biggest challenge is now is creating community behind your brand. If you are able to click this, if you are able to crack and create a community behind your brand, you will be able to achieve or to penetrate the market. One more also challenge is supporting and maintaining the team. Everyone looking for the customers, but to have a customers, you have to have a really good team. So a team is the core of any business. It's not one-man show. It's everyone show. And this is where, when you go to a restaurant, and this is why we call it refills, you are not paying only for the food. You're paying for food, service, the atmosphere, which at the end of the day, it's the whole experience. So team is another challenge. finding the right people to your business is a challenge.
Well, now, let me just ask you a different question, off topic. There are, almost 12,000, I believe, restaurants in Dubai alone. What would you say specifically? There seems to be, and you said about copying each other and non-support and things like this. Now, there seems to be a trend within Dubai that a chef could have a good idea, or an F&B operator could have a fantastic idea. Then you have somebody who is not from a food and beverage background, but is ready to invest. They invest, but then they expect the turnaround and the return on investment to be within 2-3 months. Why do you feel that happens a lot here? Because it seems to be an ongoing trend, because it seems to be that people don't necessarily, who don't come from an F&B background, don't seem to understand that you need a longer term plan for the business to work.
I think, it's these are like, side passion projects for certain people who are not restaurateurs. So anyone who has a bit of money to invest, decides to one day open up a restaurant, and I think they connect with probably a chef and they create that concept, but they don't understand the dynamics of a restaurant, they don't understand the business model, they don't understand how long it takes to actually build equity. And this is ultimately why, you have this huge turnover in number of restaurants around the city. Yeah, that's my take on it.
I think it's happening everywhere, and when you talk to people, everyone dreams to open a restaurant.
Absolutely.
Which is very interesting. Even people coming from different backgrounds, they jump into this industry because everyone is eating, everyone is enjoying the food, or most of people are enjoying the food, and then they think it's an easy business. But I think it's happening everywhere, and I think the chefs also become more aware now. Instead of just working under a hotel or under a big group, they try now to go out and step out from their comfort zone and start different things. The only mistake maybe it's happening is finding the right people to be your partner, whether it's as a chef or whether it's as also an investor, because he's not only an investor, he needs to be more than an investor, because money is there in the market, but you need someone who understands also how to, not only how to manage, but how to support, whether it's emotionally, because opening a business is like going through different emotional feeling, different different issues, different problems, especially with the first business. So you need to find the right partner. Opening a business, anyone can open a business. Sustaining a business, this is the question mark. Are you able to sustain your business? We've been within Corona, seeing businesses who've been in the market for the last 60, 70, 50 years. With Corona, they disappeared. Mm-hmm. So this is giving you a big question mark.
Yes.
So sustaining the business is the biggest challenge that's facing everyone. No one knows the future.
Because I think you're absolutely right. You touched upon two very important things that when I talk to specifically chefs, as you said, chefs are the soul of the business, and some would argue that business people who don't come from food and beverage don't necessarily understand that, number one. Number two, you're absolutely right. The team is absolute key into driving the business. So I think you really touched upon two fantastic points there, and thank you very much for your answers. Now, as you both know, this is a food-based podcast. I'm going to ask the two of you this. First of all, can you please tell me your first or your favorite ever food memory?
Yeah. Myself, it's from early childhood, and my grandmother used to make these incredible meat pastries, from Tripoli in Lebanon. and I can still taste them today. You know, there was my favorite thing. My mom also makes this incredible like dardra, which is essentially rice and lentils with crisp onions or caramelized onions, and then just a bit of sour yogurt. You know, it's a fantastic combination. It's these simple things, you know, that I grew up on personally, you know, that sort of stuck and that I can always recall, you know, whenever I'm thinking about food or I'm craving something homey.
Wow. And Ahmed, for you?
I've been asked this question more than one time, and this is a very difficult question for me, really, because I enjoy food and I have a lot of good memories when it comes to food. I think that I can mention some of the countries that I really enjoy the experience there. One of them, like Indonesia. We were traveling into different villages and we were trying food in different places, which was amazing. Japan is one of the countries that I enjoy going to. Russia, I've been in Russia, and the food there was like really amazing, and some of the few traditional restaurants.
Wow.
Copenhagen. I've been some of the also places, and I think one of the underestimated cuisine is the Emirati cuisine, where I always believe, you know, we know there are few restaurants in UAE and Dubai, but the UAE cuisine or Emirati cuisine is really defined. If you go to Ras Al Khaimah, to Fujairah, you have a totally different experiences when you eat in locals' house, and rather than eating in restaurants. So Emirati food is one of the things that is always like, but not the one in the restaurant. I can't maybe mention one restaurant that I can recommend in UAE, but this is where I think Dubai Tourism also trying to push this, to have a proper places to have really a good Emirati food. But in general, I have different good memories with food.
Well, look, I think you touched on a very important point here about Emirati food, because, as you know, throughout the world there are very many different chefs who, you know, whether it's Turkey, Japan, Copenhagen, you have these chefs who have the base of their culture, and then they take those beautiful ingredients or those beautiful flavors, and then they turn them into almost like a modern twist. Do you feel that would be welcomed here in the UAE?
I think yes, but we need to fix the base at the beginning and go to the next step. The challenge that we don't have like maybe enough chefs who's pushing this or promoting this or trying this, especially with the young one. Most of the young one, we do have really good chefs, but they went to different kind of cuisines or to different kind of business like burgers or so. Having young chefs, I think, will help to redefine the Emirati cuisine and bring the original Emirati cuisine. Because Emirati cuisine is not only in Dubai, not only in Sharjah, not only in Abu Dhabi, it's also in Ras Al Khaimah and Fujairah, where you can see totally different way of cooking techniques, different way of doing food, which is also very interesting. But you can't see it in any one of the restaurants here in the market.
Yeah, I lived in Dibba for a long time.
Okay, so you know
Now, the other question I want to ask you is, I want you to go back into your memory, and you know, because you must have both had some incredible meals throughout your life, but I want you to really tell me the very, very best, if you can, your meal of a lifetime, the one place that will stick with you or has stuck with you throughout your entire life.
I have a very, very good recent one. It's Greg Malouf's Chef's Table. Fantastic. To Ahmed's point earlier, you know, on how you redefine a cuisine from a certain origin, Greg does that incredibly well. So it's Middle Eastern cuisine, but taken up to a completely different level where you've never seen it before. A combination of, you know, great ingredients that you don't expect, reinventing, certain recipes that you eat on an everyday basis, but giving them a new twist and a fantastic table.
Well, and the fact that you had a chef's table with him, that must have been quite amazing, informative.
The guy is a legend, so much history behind him, so much experience, so many stories, fantastic guy.
And Ahmed, for you?
It's again another difficult question. I think sometimes it's not only about the food, it's more of the whole experience.
Yes.
Sometimes the food is okay, but because of the experience, it becomes very, memorial experience. So again, I do have like a lot of different good experiences, which the food is a big part of it. I don't have a specific experience that it came to my mind. I always, like I said to the guys, I have a bad memory when it's come to memory. But again, with food, it's something that I enjoy. If I travel, the first thing I see where I'm going to eat. This is my first checklist. So I do have a lot of good experiences when it's come to food. I always struggle to find, I always try even to sometimes reflect and try to remember where was the best experience, but all of them were best.
Amazing.
He's eating out all the time, so that's why.
Actually, this is one of the challenge, as a business owner or as a food and beverage, you need to keep looking after your weight.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
10 kg up, 10 kg down. This is one of your KPI that you need to.
Yes. It's true, but also it's research to make sure that you keep in line with your competition, or where are you in the market and things like this.
But to come back to the question, I'm not trying to run away from the answer, but I think for me what's attracts me is the simple food, the simplicity, the things which cooked in a simple way, introduced in a simple way, and maybe you feel this in Tifers. We try to bring some normal dishes. We are not big fancy when it comes to presentation. I'm not a big fan of fine dining. It's really interesting. It's really good, but I like simplicity more.
I used to really. I was obsessed by fine dining when I was younger, and I worked in some fine dining establishments when I was growing up. But what struck me the first time I ate in Three Fields was the pure simplicity of the presentation, but the incredible technicality of flavor that was delivered on the plate.
Yeah.
And I think for me nowadays, that's what I would call fine dining. It's beautiful setting. The setting is incredible. It's a casual setting, great service. The food, again, is fantastic, but the pure simplicity of it, as you say, is an absolute key.
We have this as a motto in our team, which is making complex simple. It's not make, sometimes, without feeling, you try to make simple complex, and this is where people don't understand it. But if you try to make complex simple, this is where people appreciate it, because it's something they understand. It's meeting their needs, and this is what people enjoy. And this is what I enjoy myself, is simplicity and things.
Now, as we're discussing about different types of restaurant experiences, could you, again, go back into memory and see if you can tell me, for example, your funniest restaurant or kitchen experience that has ever happened to you before?
Well, I have one in the kitchen. Me and my brother would always go around and switch sort of sugar and salt in the jars while my sisters or my mom were cooking, and as a result, we'd end up getting punished, which essentially we'd have to eat the food that came out as a result. So it happened way too many times, But yeah, I think Ahmed has probably a lot more restaurant.
I think one of the weird concepts that I had, or one of the weird experience I had, was in Jakarta, where we went to one of the restaurants, and then there's no menu. You just sit on the table, and then the food will come from all the food will come to the table. Then I was like, what's going on? We didn't order. They said, no, this is the concept. All the food will come to the table. Eat whatever you eat. If you don't touch this dish, it will go to the next table. Okay, that's very interesting. So from hygiene perspective, even I was discussing with someone how these guys will do in Corona.
Yeah.
It's become more complicated for them.
Food cost. How does that work?
They take the dish and just send it to the next table. If you are not finishing, let's say I didn't touch this dish, so this dish will be taken and then it's moved to the next table.
Wow.
Which was interesting experience, but it's not something that, and it's very popular in
Really?
If you ask Indonesian people, it's very popular. It's one of the, and it's packed.
Wow.
That's why they don't have a problem. I don't think there's a food waste there.
Yeah.
Because it was packed. For us coming from different backgrounds, it was like, okay, this is a little bit weird.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
There's no menu, all the food will come to the table. And the food, like, the dishes are very small, but then the table will be full of food. So whatever you eat is counted.
So you kind of have to make sure you're the first one in the restaurant, otherwise you're getting leftovers
Yeah.
from the previous table.
Don't know.
Wow. It's very interesting. That's a very interesting concept. Yeah, and I agree. I don't think it would work now. Now, for both of you gentlemen, again, who would you say would be your top three, either culinary giants or tech giants for that matter?
Okay. Culinary giants. I'd always want to meet, or I always wanted to meet Massimo Bottura.
He was here.
He was here.
I think he was here. Yeah, he was here. It never happened. So next time I'll try to, ambush him at the restaurant, Torno Subito. But yeah, Massimo Bottura is definitely one. Obviously, Gordon Ramsay. You can't bypass him, when we're talking about food globally. Yeah, these are the two for me. What about you?
The drivers who work for Deliveroo and all these aggregators, these guys are heroes and
They
they're
are
doing
heroes,
great.
absolutely.
Even though I disagree with Deliveroo, but I think these guys did great when it's come to technology, when it's come to food delivery. Yes, there are some issues happening on the other side, but I respect what these guys are doing as a tech, and I also respect all these drivers who spend day and night trying to deliver food on time.
Not an easy job here.
It's not an easy job. Summer's coming now, Ramadan is coming tomorrow, is Ramadan.
Yeah.
So these guys are like trying to do their best to deliver the people's food.
Now, gentlemen, in terms of your experience combined, two separate questions. First one for you, Bassel. What would be your best advice for people who are looking to have startups similar to yours? What would be your advice to them?
Well, I mean, we're still at the beginning, so it's very hard for me, to stand and say this is what I can tell you to do. But just from my experience, a lot of it, I think, is perseverance. When you come up with an idea, it's great as an idea, but then you need to start turning it into a reality. And that's where you start digging into the details. And this is where a lot of people get discouraged. So I would just say it's perseverance, if I can say anything, and not being afraid of starting. Because at the end of the day, you've got a great idea. A lot of people have great ideas, but how many people actually end up doing something?
Absolutely. Ahmed, my question to you is, if somebody wanted to go down the route of opening a food business, whether it's a restaurant, a food truck, or a takeaway, what would be your advice to them?
Find the right team. It's the first thing, because as Bassel said, anyone can have an idea. Everyone has an idea. Ideas is there now. I think the era of ideas, before 5 years, 6 years, when someone come up with ideas, everyone will start clapping, oh, that's too smart. It's not anymore the case, because you just type good ideas on Google, and then you will have hundreds of good ideas. You don't need to think even about an idea. But having the right time to execute is the key. Have the right time next to you is the key. If you're able to crack this, you can't do whatever. But ideas is not because I saw people coming up and they come, oh, I have this idea 2 years ago, and these guys now made it. Yeah, they made it because they have the team.
Yeah.
So start with the team.
Yeah, I want to quote Einstein here. I mean, he says, I'm not smarter than anyone else, and the quote is probably not 100% accurate, but he says, I'm not smarter than anyone else, I just stay with the problem longer.
Which is true.
Which is true.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, gents, if we want, or if anyone around the world who's listening to the podcast would like to find you on social media, how can they do that?
Absolutely. So we have a website. It's www.meelz.me. Okay. And on social media, we're currently present across all platforms. The handle is @getmeelz. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn and Twitter, obviously, and as well as TikTok. So you can follow us there.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I think before we wrap up, I just want to mention, I think it's important that we mention the chefs that have joined us from the beginning, that have believed in the journey. So obviously there is Grégoire Berger, there is Karim Bourgi, Alessandro Miselli, I hope I'm not forgetting anyone, Roberto Segura, Mohamed Shabshul, and obviously yourself, James. Yeah.
So a lot of top talent is coming on board, which is fantastic. Now, gents, I would just like to have a small recap on what we have discussed, which has been absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, both of your experiences and why the Meelz platform was created, what exactly Meelz is, and I think it's very, very clear to everybody. The biggest learning curve so far, which is great. Why is the platform different and sets it apart from the competition, which is incredible. And again, to quote Ahmed, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, I mean, I'm biased because I'm a chef, but when you said the chef is the soul of the business, I think that is, when it comes to restaurants, I think that is absolutely what you said.
I saw, sorry to interrupting, but I saw a documentary which is talking about the ghost kitchen in China, and they were meeting the CEO, and one of the things, I'm not quoting him, but this is what he said, their aim is to eliminate chefs. Yes, to automate everything, and for us, this is totally wrong. This is what we would, and this is where also it's pushing us more and more to bring Meelz and to support or to empower chefs, because we're totally against this idea.
Yeah.
Because chefs is there to stay and to grow.
Absolutely, absolutely. Then again, the biggest challenge that restaurants are facing, and as you quite rightly said, everything is to do with the team, and this is one thing that I'm a huge supporter of. I really push my team as much as I can, and I put them in the limelight as much as possible, because without them we can't really do our jobs very well. Your food memories, fantastic, and different meals of a lifetime, the funniest restaurant experiences, then your culinary giants, love that. The advice, gentlemen, thank you very much for the advice, because I think it's all that to do with the team and getting the right people on board. And then where people can find you, and I will also make sure that all of these things are in all of the show notes. So Ahmed and Bassel, on behalf of the Chef JKP podcast, I would really like to say a huge thank you so much for coming on board. It has been an absolute pleasure to interview you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you.